The government of Cuba decrees official mourning for the victims of the accident that occurred at the Saratoga Hotel in Havana on May the 6th. Peru's summons Prime Minister Aníbal Torres and two other cabinet officials to answer for the events that took place during the social protest against mandatory social mobility decree in April. The president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, warned that the West is ready to sacrifice the rest of the world for its claims of global dominance. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. And now we begin. The President of the Republic of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, has declared official mourning decreed from 6 a.m. on May 13th until 12 midnight on May 14th. The flag hoisted at half-mast in public buildings and military institutions. The official mourning was declared on Thursday after the unfortunate accident that occurred last May 6th at the emblematic Saratoga Hotel in the island's capital. On the afternoon of May 12th, the body of the last person missing as a result of the accident was found, allegedly the chambermaid of the tourist resort. The death toll resulting is 45 people, 44 Cubans and one Spanish citizen. And as we were referring, Cuban rescue workers and firefighters found the last missing person after the accident that occurred last Friday. With this finding, the death toll rose to 45 people and almost 100 injured after the explosion on May 6, caused by a gas leak. Meanwhile, Fire Department head Luis Carlos Guzman reaffirmed that rescue teams continue working in very difficult conditions due to the instability of the building. In a visit to the site, the first secretary of the Communist Party of Cuba in the province of Havana, Luis Antonio Torres Iribar, confirmed that efforts are focused on finding everyone trapped under the rubble and that professional rescue teams, high government officials, representatives, members of the armed forces, and other institutions remain at the site of the accident. On Wednesday, Antigua and Barbuda's Minister of Communications, Milford Nicholas, said the Prime Minister's refusal to attend to the Summit of the Americas if Cuba, Venezuela, or Nicaragua are excluded.
Cabinet did discuss this matter at length yesterday. The Prime Minister had stepped out of Cabinet for a brief moment with consultation with another Caribbean head, and upon his return, he detailed the Cabinet as to the position. You would note that there are a number of other Latin American countries that have expressed a similar concern that we have expressed here from Antigua. This is supposed to be a meeting of state heads, and I believe that the position that we discussed yesterday and that was agreed upon is that the Prime Minister will not attend the meetings if Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua are going to be excluded. That is the precondition.
In Ecuador, the hunger strike of 30 teachers to demand salary increase and reforms to the education law is in its 10th day. On Thursday, the teachers on voluntary fasting will go to the Constitutional Court that will debate the executive's veto on education law reforms that will set the salaries of the teachers at the same level of other public employees. Meanwhile, another group of teachers will mobilize to support the hunger strike carried out by their colleagues. The teachers said that if the response of the Constitutional Court is not favorable, they will promote protests in various regions of the country with the support of various social sectors.
We say to the government, down with its neoliberal policies. We tell them that there must be investment in the social sectors, if not to step aside because the Ecuadorian people will unite to put aside these measures that really keep the Ecuadorian people in misery. Here we are demonstrating that there is money not only for education, but also for health, for social security, and for the popular sectors.
Thousands of people in Medellin took part in sitting protests against the decision by the Colombian prosecutor's office to suspend the mayors of Medellin and Ibagué. The public demonstration was called on by the mayor of Medellin, Daniel Quintero, who together with Daniel Hurtado, the mayor of Ibagué, were dismissed from prosecutor Margarita Cabello for their alleged participation in political activities. This sit-in took place at the square of the administrative center La Alpujarra in downtown Medellin, where thousands of social organizations and thousands of people expressed their rejection to the measure, while ratifying their support for the two mayors. In his speech, Quintero said the measure is an attempt to take away rights and self-determination from citizens.
Only in a dictatorship, with the obscure influence of Uribe supporters, we see the use of all the powers of the state to take away the rights and self-determination of the citizens, to take away the will of the people.
Colombia's presidential candidate, Gustavo Petro, defended Daniel Quintero, the mayor of Medellin, who is temporarily suspended from his post for allegedly intervening in the presidential election campaign during a rally in Fusagasugá, south of Bogotá.
An official who is not a criminal judge cannot violate political rights, which are fundamental rights of the citizens, because they have the right to elect, not violate political rights of the elected. Margarita Cabello, Attorney General of the nation, decided to remove the popularly elected mayor from the mayor's office of Medellin.
In Brazil, social organizations and political parties mobilized to the federal Supreme Court to demand recognition of the genocide of the Afro-descendant population in the country. Around 250 organizations took to the streets on Wednesday to file a lawsuit due to the criminalization of the Afro-Brazilian population by state security forces. According to figures, out of the 2,700 victims of police abuses, 2,200 are black, which is equivalent to 81%. Brazil's Afro-descendant community continues to be the main target of police interventions, resulting in death. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. And we are back. The Peruvian Congress continues the interpellation on Thursday to the President of the Council of Ministers, Aníbal Torres, and two other ministers of the cabinet of Pedro Castillo. The session aims at determining the reasons for the curfew imposed by the government on April 5th amid social protests. In this regard, emphasized that the declaration of emergency and curfew in Lima and Callao last April 5th was based on the need to allow the armed forces to collaborate with the police in maintaining public security. The Premier emphasized that police intelligence reports and reports from the Ministry of the Interior show that in this context, violent actions were expected to take place in Lima and Callao, which justified the adoption of the measure. And this Thursday, the so-called piquetera, the march, arrives in the capital of Argentina to demand better salaries and social benefits from the government of President Alberto Fernandez. The march that started 3 days ago in different parts of the country with the slogan "For Work, for Wages, Against Hunger and Poverty" reached Plaza de Mayo. The demonstrators also gathered at the Puey Predon beach in order to hold a closing ceremony in the vicinity of the Casa Rosada at 3 p.m. local time. A report by the International Atomic Energy Agency stated that nations members of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and independent oil producers met 223% of the goals set in April, which called for a cutback in hydrocarbon production. The International Energy Agency stated that the alliance complied with its agreements by more than 200%. Meanwhile, OPEC on Thursday cut its forecast for world oil demand growth in 2022 for the second month in a row due to the conflict in the Donbass. On Thursday in Finland, the President and Prime Minister delivered a joint statement saying that Finland should apply for NATO membership as soon as possible. And this was confirmed by the Finnish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Pekka Haavisto, before the European Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee.
Finland decided to apply, the accession of Finland would strengthen the security and stability of the Baltic Sea region and Northern Europe. Finland is a regional security provider and would further strengthen NATO as a future ally.
And Greece is extending a bilateral military agreement with the United States for 5 years. The agreement, to be ratified by Parliament on Thursday, will grant the U.S. military continued access to 3 bases in mainland Greece, together with its long-standing naval presence in the island of Crete. Speaking in Parliament, Greek Foreign Minister Nikos Dendias said that the alliances were key to the country's defense strategy. The main opposition party, the leftist Sprizia, opposed the agreement, arguing that it didn't provide Athens with sufficient security guarantees. Last year, Greece also finalized a bilateral defense deal with France in the wake of tense naval standoff with fellow NATO member Turkey in 2020. In the United States, a fire fueled by intense ocean winds barreled into a gated community overlooking the Pacific Ocean in Laguna Niguel, burning at least 20 homes in the latest sign of the drastic effects that climate change and drought are having in California. The coastal fire broke out on a cool but gusty day and spread rapidly, cresting up a canyon before burning huge homes. Hundreds of residents fled the flames while firefighters spent the night in house-to-house battles, trying to prevent the blaze from spreading deeper into the subdivision. According to Orange County Supervisor Trina Foley, the fire has not been contained, and a local emergency order remains in place in Laguna Niguel as of late Wednesday night. The destruction underscored the year-round danger of fires in Southern California, even in cool conditions. Unlike many wildfires in the region, the coastal fire was fanned not by Santa Ana winds, but from the desert by the strong gusts coming from the Pacific Ocean. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. And we are back. The President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, warned that the West is willing to sacrifice the rest of the world for its ambition of global domination. At a meeting with members of the government on economic issues, Putin pointed out that several countries are already facing threats of starvation. In this context, the dignitary indicated that if the imposition of sanctions against the Russian nation continues to spread, the European Union could also face consequences that will be difficult to reverse. Putin referred to the fact that the blame for this situation lies entirely and completely with the ruling elites of Western countries, who, in order to preserve their global dominance, are willing to sacrifice the rest of the world.
We are building this work, taking into account difficult external conditions. I mean both the difficult global situation and the sanctions pressure from the Western states.
Now we move on. Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Western sanctions imposed on the country also affect Europe.
It is obvious that due to objective economic laws, the continuation of the obsession with sanctions will inevitably lead to the most complex, difficult to reverse consequences for the European Union and for its citizens.
North Korea fired 3 short-range ballistic missiles towards the sea on Thursday in the latest of a series of weapons demonstrations this year. The launches could underscore North Korea's determination to press ahead with its efforts to modernize its weapons and pressure the United States and its allies into accepting as a nuclear state and relax sanctions on the North Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a statement the 3 missiles launched from the North Capital region flew towards the waters of the country's eastern coast. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida instructed officials to do their utmost to analyze the launch, ensure safety of aircraft and vessels in the area, and take precaution and readiness for any possible emergencies. European Union Special Envoy for Afghanistan Thomas Nicholson said on Thursday the Taliban shutdown of girls' education showed they are not listening to the Afghan people and pose a major hurdle to international recognition of the new government.
A government that isn't really listening to its people. What women have been asking about is not instructions on how to dress, it's about how to feed the family, it's about access to schools, it's about access to health, it's about having an opportunity to work. So I think if the schools open relatively soon throughout the country at all levels for boys and girls, this could be a positive step forward. It is not the only thing. It will not lead to recognition the day after. There are also issues regarding many other human rights, also women's rights, minority rights, security and other issues. But it could be a first and a positive step, and it would be a dramatic shift in a way from what we see as a more backward-going trend, a regressive trend in many areas.
The Lebanese cabinet met at the presidential palace in Baghdad ahead of the parliamentary elections on Sunday. The parliament, voted in on Sunday, will have to tackle overdue reforms required for the international assistance the country desperately needs. After Lebanon struck a conditional deal with the International Monetary Fund for a $3 billion aid package, incoming lawmakers will face many challenges in a country where there is little consensus on a roadmap for financial recovery. Since 2019, Lebanon has suffered an unprecedented economic decline caused by decades of mismanagement and corruption. The state's bankruptcy has hampered imports of basic items including food, medicine, and fuel. According to the United Nations, more than 80% of people have fallen into poverty. Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani met Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi in Tehran on Thursday as talks fell on bringing the United States back into the 2015 nuclear deal between Tehran and both powers. The one-day visit by Qatar's emir came as the European Union's coordinator for the nuclear talks, Enrique Mora, held the second day of meetings in Tehran with Iran's chief negotiator Ali Bagheri. During his meeting with Ebrahim Raisi, Al Thani called for more dialogue to settle the standoff. Washington unilaterally abandoned the nuclear deal under then-President Donald Trump in 2018 and reimposed sweeping economic sanctions, prompting Iran to begin rolling back its own commitments. President Joe Biden has said he wants the U.S. to return to the agreement, but on and off talks on the mechanics have been stalled since March. And Shanghai's government said they are helping key manufacturers and delivery services back to work, even as 2 million residents remained confined to their homes for nearly a month and a half. An official Shanghai postal regulators stated on Thursday that more than 1 million orders for deliveries are coming every day. The official said the number was about 1/6 of that before the lockdown. The suspension of delivery service left residents under lockdown in need of food, medicine, and other daily necessities. Shanghai Health Commission on Thursday reported more than 1,000 new cases over the past 24 hours and 5 new fatalities, raising the death toll from the recent outbreak to 565. Residents had to undergo multiple rounds of self-testing using antigen test kits, as well as nucleic acid tests, which was generated a large demand for the kits. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.